Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another Legally Armed America video. I'm, of course, Paul Glasgow here. Guys, I got an interesting video today, and I want to generate some independent thought from a lot of you guys. I know in many cases, and I respect and appreciate this, you guys don't always agree with what I've got to say, and that's the beauty of being an American, right? We should be able to disagree with one another and not cause a bunch of disruption in our normal everyday lives, right? Unfortunately, a lot of people are of the thought that if you don't think like them, there's no other way. And they can't ever align themselves with you in any kind of way. I don't see things like that. And I have a feeling many of you are probably going to disagree with my stance in this story today. Headline: Patel plans major cutback to ATF by moving as many as 1,000 agents to FBI. Now, anytime we hear something about the ATF that's not a positive move in the ATF's direction, we automatically think that's a win, right? And I'm not saying this isn't. I'm just saying it's a knee-jerk reaction to go, yay! But be thinking about this. Is that really a win? FBI Director Kash Patel, who also serves as acting director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, has outlined plans to move as many as 1,000 ATF agents to the FBI, cutting ATF's agents by more than a third. 3 people briefed on the plan told CNN. The move represents a major cutback of the ATF. Agency has long been in the crosshairs of gun rights groups that believes it infringes on Second Amendment rights. The ATF has about 2,600 agents and more than 5,000 employees, a number that has remained largely unchanged for years. I'm going to give you some official numbers on that here in a second. The move is expected to begin with the reassignment of a couple hundred ATF agents to border-related criminal enforcement duty as FBI agents, one person briefed on the matter said. Now, of course, you guys know there are a lot of these bad elements that are heavily entrenched in the ATF and the FBI for that matter. And just because Kash Patel is the director doesn't mean all of a sudden that the culture has changed there. Again, these people are deeply embedded in these bureaucratic institutions. Well, they appear to not be happy with the way this story is being put out there. An ATF spokeswoman disputed that the agents were being reassigned to the FBI and said in a statement Saturday that as a part of the ATF and FBI's plans to address issues at the southern border, quote, the ATF will temporarily assign approximately 150 agents from existing field offices to other ATF field offices, where they will continue serving as ATF agents to support the Surge initiative. It's important to clarify that this is a temporary reassignment of resources to bolster public safety and blah, blah, blah. There they go with the public safety crap. Additionally, ATF routinely initiates surge operations in cities across countries facing significant increase in violent crime. That's bullcrap. But interesting to point out that Kash Patel says that he's moving 1,000 ATF agents from the ATF to the FBI, but this person says it's only 150 agents, not 1,000, and that they're not being moved to the FBI. They're staying with the ATF. They're just going to be reassigned temporarily somewhere else. And again, I have to repeat, 150, not 1,000, according to this ATF broad. Now, you see, they also mentioned eventually as many as 1,000 ATF agents would be given temporary reassignments as FBI agents, though with no end date for the reassignment. So it's not really what the headline states, that these people are being reassigned as we would think, oh, they're being moved completely. In fact, Kash Patel and those guys were actually bragging about the cost savings regarding budget. Well, it doesn't seem like they're saving anything, because those same people are still going to be employed at the same rate, with the same pension, with the same benefits. So the American people see no cost savings whatsoever. Doesn't matter what hat they're wearing that day. If it's a temporary reassignment, they're still permanent ATF agents just working to fulfill duties in other areas. Now, naturally, a spokesperson for the FBI declined to comment, and a spokesperson for the Justice Department also did not want to comment. Now, my good friends over at Gun Owners of America thought this was a good idea. This was their Twitter or X post. Breaking: Kash Patel plans to cut as many as 1,000 ATF agents and reassign them to the FBI, a nearly 40% decrease. I'm not sure if that is the headline that Gun Owners of America made on their own or if they're copying and pasting that. But again, that is an incorrect statement, because Kash Patel is not cutting ATF agents, and a simple reassignment is not cutting them. And according to the ATF themselves, they're saying that these are temporary reassignments. So they're not permanent anyway, so there's no 40% decrease as GOA would mention here. Again, I'm heavily aligned with GOA, and I agree with them 99.9% of the time. Maybe this post by them came out a little too quick, possibly premature, before they had a chance to look into the information that I've had a chance to look into. So maybe they will come back and clarify this later on. GOA, again, is not known for putting out bad information. And I'm not picking on them here. I'm just stating that don't jump too quickly and start celebrating, high-fiving each other whenever we see headlines like this, because it's not really what it says. Because, again, these people, there's zero cost savings to anybody, right? Now, looking at the numbers right here, in fiscal year 2023, ATF had 5,281 employees, including, get this, 2,597, quote, special agents, and 862 industry operations investigators. So we had 2,597 special agents, right? The special agents were the ones harassing people. That's like the SS. That's the people bullying all these FFLs out there. That's the one. And the IOIs also going out there. Didn't help a lot, although some of those are good people. Well, presumably good people, right? I mean, I've heard good things about some of the IOIs. That's the people who interact directly with the FFLs, not the harassment, the routine people that they deal with. I'm curious. Okay, if we're going to go by the headline of this story that Kash Patel is reassigning, even if it's a temporary reassignment, let's just go with the supposition that it's a temporary reassignment and they're not being permanently reassigned to the FBI. Let's get past the we're not getting cost savings out of this. That's a done deal. Are these some of these special agents? Are these bullies that they're reassigning from the FBI, from the ATF to the FBI? Now, make no mistake about it. Some people have said, well, if they're assigned to the FBI, they're just going to do the same infringements against gun owners working for the FBI. Well, that's not altogether true. They're not reassigning their responsibilities to the FBI. They're giving them a different set of responsibilities. They won't be performing the same tasks, even again, as a temporary assignment with the FBI. So these rat bastards moving from the ATF to the FBI, they will be getting a different set of responsibilities that they have to carry out. So please don't think that they're taking their stuff from their desk in the ATF and they're going over here going, this is my new desk with the FBI, let me get back to work. That's not how this is going to work. So there will be less bullying is my point. Now, again, permanent, temporary, who knows? But if there are 1,000, I want to know who they are. You know, in many cases, they're looking at redundancy and overlapping of responsibilities. If it's a guy who is an administrative person or a girl, then they may look at that as a less critical role and maybe they reassign that person. I would like to see these bullies, these special agents reassigned. I think it's more important that we know what type of people that they're reassigning, not just a body count, a number that they're moving over. I think it's super critical that we know what is being moved, who's being moved, as far as day-to-day responsibilities. What were you doing before? That's what I want to know. I'd like to hear that 1,000 of those were 1,000 special agents that were going out bullying FFLs and honest law-abiding gun owners. That would be music to my ears. But you can tell that I'm not excited about this news, right? Surely you can read me well enough by now to know that this doesn't sound like something that I'm wanting to go out and get a case of beer and slam it and start high-fiving all my buddies saying, there goes the ATF. Because again, no one has been terminated. No one has been let go. And I want to remind everyone, remember you hear the phrase rearranging the chairs on the deck of the Titanic? The people who were carrying out this unconstitutional stuff, the people who put a bullet in Brian Malinowski's head, the people who killed men, women, and children in Ruby Ridge and Waco, burned them to the ground, Marvin Richardson, number one, they're all still working for the ATF. You hear some people say, I was just doing my job. That's a cop-out. I left a very lucrative position working for a Fortune 500 company. I was a regional manager for this company in the utility industry. And I got to where I was being asked to do very unscrupulous things. Things that, if you told your mom you were doing these things, she would think less of you, right? That's true, and that's the best way I know to describe it. These were things that I could not admit to friends and family that I was doing even on behalf of my company or my decisions. I was being told to tell my employees or treat my employees, lay off my employees. There was things I was expected to do, and even timing of it, laying off a group of employees that I knew in August that I had to lay off, but I couldn't tell them until after Thanksgiving because we couldn't afford to lose them too soon. Stuff like that. You know what I did? I left. After making all that money, I made a lot of money. I was there for 11 years. I was vested with this company. I left because I wasn't going to say, I'm just doing my job. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that in here. I couldn't look at my wife. I couldn't look at my family. I didn't have kids at the time, but I certainly wouldn't be able to look in the eyes of my own children, trying to raise them to be good people, knowing I was just doing my job. Let's remember, these people that we are reassigning from the ATF could have left whenever they were asked to burn these women and children to the ground in Waco. They could have left whenever they shot Randy Weaver's wife in the back or in the neck. They could have left before all that happened. They could have left after that happened. They could have left all during the gun running in Fast and Furious with Barack Obama and Eric Holder. They could have done all that. All these nasty, dirty, corrupt things that the ATF has done. If these people are still there, they could have left just like I left. Hiding behind the phrase, I was just doing my job, doesn't work with me, because that tells me that you have a type of person that is accepting of a certain culture, and they're okay with going along with it just so long as you understand, just doing my job. Let me share something with you, the type of people that we're reassigning right now and not letting go. This story goes back about 10 years, but I think it's indicative of the type of stuff that we've seen, and certainly much worse has happened during the Biden administration. Botched ATF sting in Milwaukee ensnares brain-damaged man. ATF agents running an undercover storefront in Milwaukee used a brain-damaged man with a low IQ to set up gun and drug deals, paying him in cigarettes, merchandise, and money, according to federal documents. For more than 6 months, federal agents relied on Chauncey Wright to promote Fearless Distributing. That's the name of the store, this fake store, gun store, type of store that they set up, by handing out flyers as he rode his bike around town, recommending the store to friends, family, and strangers. Wright, unaware that the store was an undercover operation run by agents with the ATF, also stocked shelves with shoes, clothing, drug paraphernalia, and auto parts. Once authorities shut down the operation, they charged the 28-year-old man with federal gun and drug counts. This was a mentally retarded man that they charged after they used him and threw him away. I have never heard of anything so ludicrous in my life, said Greg Thiel, who spent 30 years working for the Milwaukee Police Department, including on undercover stings with federal agents. Something is very wrong here, he stated. Wright's IQ measures in the 50s, about half of a normal person's IQ. During court proceedings, it was determined that Wright was a special needs related person. But as the situation unfolded, it was the ATF agents who were deemed to have taken advantage of Wright. Quote, "That's just hugely inappropriate. It's no different than using a kid," said Jim Hogemeyer, executive director of the ARC Wisconsin Disability Association. Quote, "They had to have known after working with him for more than a couple of hours. This is real exploitation," said Sharon Cabral, managing attorney for Disability Rights Wisconsin. "It's morally outrageous." Now, like most people with learning disabilities, they seem to want to be accepted. Wright's family said he was eager to be accepted by the undercover officers. With him being slow, they knew that, and they used him, said Willie Campbell, Wright's grandmother. He was too slow to catch on to what was going on. He was saying, "These are my good friends. These are my guys. They are looking out for me." Along the way, the agents paid Wright with cigarettes, merchandise, and $530 in cash for marketing and general business. Now, the counts that I mentioned earlier carry a maximum of life in prison. Under federal sentencing guidelines, however, Wright faces about 4 years in prison. Now, I want you to understand what happened here. These ATF agents had this plan. They rented this building, more on the renting thing here in a second. They rented this building, set it up as a storefront, and they were using Wright, who was mentally retarded. Again, I'm not using that term incorrectly. He is deemed mentally retarded. They were using him to not only first distribute and tell people regarding flyers about the business, but eventually they started asking him to obtain drugs and guns for them. When you're living in these low-income places, probably everybody knows somebody who's dealing in illicit stuff. And Wright, of course, knew people. So they took advantage of him, not questioning the validity of this and the right versus wrong of this. They just took advantage of him and pushed their luck. They went from, they exploited him just like the courts say. They went from just asking him to promote the business to getting involved in acquiring illegal things that they in turn slapped on him with charges to try to put him in prison for the rest of his life. I want to mention also the kind of rat bastards that we're dealing with here, the ATF. These special agents who put this whole thing together, they also weren't paying their rent to the guy who they rented the store from for this sting. Whenever the operation was over with, and they tore up the guy's place, like they did a really bad job, bad renters, if you want to look at it that way. Not only did they tear up the man's place, but they didn't pay the rent, at least not all of it. And whenever the landlord came after the sting operation was over with and was dealing directly with the federal government, the ATF, bullied this man, pretty much warned him, you better back off. We're not paying this. You better leave us alone. In other words, bullying him with their authority. In other words, things are going to happen if you don't shut up and back off. We're not paying your rent. That's the kind of people we're dealing with here. So when I see a headline talking about reassigning ATF agents to anywhere, I don't care if they're going to go make snow cones down on the corner. When I see that they're being reassigned, these are pathetic people. These are truly rat bastards. These are no good individuals. I'm just doing my job. I'm not buying it. So when you tell me you're just moving them from one place to the other, again, that's reassigning or rearranging the deck chairs of the Titanic. You've changed nothing. You have the same rat bastards doing something else in the name of the federal government. They think they have cover because they work for the federal government. And if you look at the way people probably perceive the FBI, I would be willing to bet most American people perceive the FBI as a stronger, probably more respected, even though that's really not the case. They're not very well respected anymore. But I think people do see them. They're certainly a much larger organization, the FBI is, versus the ATF. So people give them more credibility. So I feel like whenever we reassign bullies and rat bastards from one smaller bureaucracy to a bigger, more well-known one that's better funded and more well-respected, that's even worse. Now you have, in my opinion, strengthened the badness in the FBI. You've not helped anything. I don't think you've weakened the ATF, because if nothing changes policy-wise in the ATF, then who cares that they were reassigned? And again, all you've done is taken a bad element and inserted it into another organization to make them worse. It certainly did not improve the FBI by putting these rat bastards in with them, right? Now, before I close the door on that story regarding Mr. Wright, this operation was so carelessly and crappily run. It was clearly a flawed operation from the jump. During this 6 or 8 month period of time, ATF guns were stolen from an agent's vehicle, a machine gun that remains unrecovered right now. The storefront itself was burglarized of nearly $40,000 in merchandise, and who knows, that could have been the ATF burglarizing their own store. We are not dealing with people who have a high moral value. Agents left behind sensitive documents after they shut down the operation. Agents damaged the building, then refused to pay the landlord, warning him against pursuing the matter. At least 3 of the wrong people were arrested and charged, including one who was in prison at the time, and authorities failed to capitalize on early leads to find the stolen machine gun that I mentioned earlier. So what if you and I had a machine gun that we just left in our vehicle and it got stolen? Depending on what part of the country you live in, you might be in prison as a result of that. It's doubtful anyone from the FBI got so much as a write-up with a machine gun, fully automatic machine gun being stolen from a vehicle. So in closing, forgive me when I see a headline like Patel plans major cutback to ATF by moving as many as 1,000 agents to the FBI. Forgive me for not applauding that when I see that. Because as long as I know these people are still receiving a paycheck from the federal government on behalf, they're working on behalf of the American people, we know what they're doing. They didn't all of a sudden put a different windbreaker on that says FBI instead of their old ATF one and suddenly become a better person. They are the same scum of the earth that they were when they wore the other windbreaker. So I'm not trying to applaud anything. When you tell me that you have terminated 1,000 special agents from the ATF and they are on the street looking for a job, then I'm celebrating. Until then, don't expect me to get too wound up when I see headlines like this.